Right, good morning. Welcome to Thursday, the 19th of February. Moved from a Wednesday for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee extraordinary meeting. And surprise, surprise, it's raining again. First item, we've got to read the...
yes.
Thank you very much. Obviously, with the two items that we have to do with fire evacuation and microphones. Regarding fire evacuation, there are no planned fire alarms scheduled at this time. So, Kate, if you want to make sure you're listening, should the fire alarm go off, please make your way. Good. Please make your way out of the building via the nearest fire exit to the car park beside the Windmill Public House, beside rather than in the Windmill Public House, Councillor Keithley. Unless you're buying, of course. And microphones, please ensure that the microphone directly in front of you is switched on and logged in. Please not move the microphone from its set position, and when speaking, ensure the microphone is directly in front of you and not to the side or up high. So thank you for that. First item on the agenda is apologies heard, please.
Yes, good morning, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Littlewood and Councillor Henry-Seraphine this morning.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Any good? Councillor Rice, please.
Yes, I think I should declare the fact that my wife owns a retirement property that belonged to my deceased father-in-law up until about a year ago, and as far as I can tell, it meets the definition of a second home, in that it is still slightly furnished or substantially furnished, and it is empty.
No, that's fine, yeah. Thank you very much. It's noted. Obviously, we're not making any decision on it. We're discussing it, and but yeah.
Councillor Rice, would you mind confirming, is it within or out of the district of Stratford-on-Avon?
It is in Henley, within Stratford-upon-Avon.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's properly recorded for you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Again, it's better to say out in the public than somebody say, "Oh, why wasn't this declared?" Even though, so thank you very much. So we've got there in the end, and thank you very much, and thank you, officers, for that one as well. Chair's brief. I've got no items to brief about today. And item number 4, public participation. I've not received any notice in accordance with Committee Procedure Rule 13. Thank you. So we will move on to item number 5, which is the Cabinet meeting of 23rd of February. Hopefully everybody's got their Cabinet agenda. And we've got 2 items to talk about today. The introduction of a second homes premium and the update on the revenue capital budget in light of the changes that the government announced on the funding quite late, shall we say. So I think they're quite pertinent. I'm not overly fussed. Whoever wants to kick off first. Hannah, do you want to go first so you can escape earlier?
If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. I've got my agenda here for the Cabinet Extraordinary meeting today. However, it does just say the following item will be considered at the meeting: the introduction of the second homes premium. That's the only one on there. I don't have the...
I think there was an email around with the second agenda with the additional item, because it came out after the original agenda was sent out. So there was an item from Mr. Allison saying about discussing the change to the budget for 26-27 in light of the change of the settlement from the government. Is that right, Mr. Burrell? They changed the settlement? So yeah, it is on the agenda, but it's just you just haven't got a paper version.
Right, then, yeah, then I haven't got the relevant paperwork required for that then. I have my Cabinet papers. Is everything required in there that I need? or have there been additional things added in? It's just in the Cabinet. Right, then I've got the Cabinet papers. Okay, thank you. Can I just let you know then, Chair, please, I have to leave by 12 o'clock due to an important appointment.
I would hope we were finished well before then, Councillor
Well-
Lockhart, but I did stress the word hope, but yeah, thank you. Right then, any other points before we bring in Hannah? Hannah, please, can you come in? Thank you.
Okay, so the second home premium is a proposal to introduce a premium in relation to second homes. So there's a very clear definition in relation to second homes, that in that they are substantially furnished, but also that they are not occupied as somebody's main residence. So this doesn't include, for example, a property that somebody owns, that they are renting out, that somebody is living in. And this paper is on the back of the public consultation that was done, so it brings back the results of the consultation, and also on the back of the consultation, what we've done is we've finalised the impact assessment, taking into view some of the feedback in relation to the consultation. And so what the paper covers is effectively a summary of the consultation responses. You've also got the report which is appended, which has got the consultation responses, and then the impact assessment, which goes through the various factors that the council needs to consider in relation to considering whether or not to apply the premium.
Brilliant. Right then, who wants to kick off on the debate on this one, or items of clarification? Councillor Rice, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I think I should say that in principle, I am in favour of premium being charged on second homes. However, I feel that this report only goes so far, and I am a little uncomfortable about sending it forward without knowing a little bit more about the detail, in particular the exemptions, how the government definition of a second home is going to be treated by Stratford, what exemptions are going to be put in place. And there's also a lot of detail I would quite like to know about how much this is going to cost, how much is it going to produce. And I think, I think the subject is sufficiently important to require further examination when the detail is available, probably in about 6 months' time, because this is obviously not going to come in until 27, is it?
I think we'll... Mr Pitts, want to come in on this one briefly?
Yes, there is a 12-month window between making the decision and implementing the scheme, which if the decision in principle is taken by council that we will be implementing it, we would be looking to implement it from the financial year 27-28. So yes, you're right, Councillor Rice, there will be a period of time between the decision in principle and the detailed design of the scheme, which Hannah Buckley will lead with her team.
Sorry, oh, don't worry. Sometimes when you talk to yourself, you get the right answer as well, don't you? Councillor Johnston, please.
I'm also, with Councillor Rice, broadly in favour of this proposal. This is a popular area for second homes. I think there's a good deal of uncertainty about how far that does contribute to the local economy or simply takes houses out of use. So the issue for me, I think, is, along with Councillor Rice, I'd quite like to see the words "in principle" on the recommendation 1, because I think there's still the option of not implementing it, we're giving notice that we might, or we could, but the decision has yet to be taken to do so. My other thought is that it would be helpful, I think, if we could, if this committee could consider the proposed exemptions in some way before we get into the detail of the budget process next year, and we take those decisions in the summer or autumn rather than in the sort of car crash that can be in the complexity of the budget papers. So my suggestion is that we should be considering the proposed exemptions in good time before the decisions are taken.
Brilliant, thank you for that. I will come back to that shortly. I'll just bring Mr Perkson first.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson and Councillor Rice. On those points, we do need a clear decision of Council because we have to give 12 months' notice, and that decision has to say that it is our intention to do it, and it also has to set the percentage premium that we intend to charge, which is 100% in the recommendation. Those, if we don't have a clear decision on that, that will be subject to legal challenge. So we would need clarity on that. I don't see any reason why the Scrutiny Committee couldn't be involved in the detailing of the exemptions and the schemes and how we apply it as that develops over the year. That would be some useful input that we could, I'm sure Hannah would appreciate as she develops the scheme. So we can sort of move on that, but we would need clarity on a decision. I don't think an in-principle decision would be enough because we could then be challenged when we brought it in next year for not giving the 12 months clear notice.
Do you want to follow up, Councillor Johnson?
Can I briefly come back? I do understand that. But I understand the need to agree on recommendation 1.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I will bring in very shortly, Councillor Whitehouse, I promise. Yeah, what I would like to see is, obviously, for it to be brought back, it's a suitable, appropriate time and not, I'd say I'm agreeing with Councillor Johnson that sometimes December, January and February can be quite challenging. So I think that would be good to see it. And it might be also good to see what other local authorities are doing, how their schemes are similar or what we're embracing, the better things from their schemes as well as part of the process. So I think that might be a future item we can suggest. So hopefully that's helpful. So I've just rambled on a bit now, but I'll bring Councillor Wally Hawkins in, please.
Yes, thank you. I've got 2 parts to this. One of the questions that I have is how relevant is it for us to be making this decision at the moment when we don't, when next year we'll be electing the shadow council for the devolved council. So surely that is a decision that should rest with them. So to talk about deferring, I think it should be deferred for them to make that decision. However, if that is not to be the case, can I bring your attention to the fact that, well, my parents, one deceased, one not, live in Gwynedd, and they have this they introduced this second homes council tax there. It's been an unmitigated disaster in all ways, really, because there are many people say, oh, it will release properties for local people to buy, but the reality is that it hasn't, because some of the housing, the second homes there are expensive housing, so it's not available really for first-time buyers to buy or locals. It's had a devastating impact on tourism. It's had a devastating impact on other industries around that. So cleaning, maintenance companies, that sort of thing that go in regularly to check these properties. And I am really against this based on first-hand experience of what it's done to an area. I think this is punitive. People are already paying 100% of the council tax anyway for these properties, for their second homes. And what we're asking today is for people to pay even more for the benefit of having that second home. And the truth is, with the second home, people are coming, they're using that. Yes, they're part of the communities, but they are contributing massively financially to the area as well, to the local pubs, etc. And I find this, I'm disappointed that this council is bringing this before us based on first-hand experience and we are an area of tourism. We're a pleasant place to come to. And I'm deeply saddened that this is before us. And I think we absolutely, based on what the Councillor Rice and Councillor Johnson have alluded to, I actually think we need some more information on the effect this has had, not on councils such as Coventry or wherever else they are, but on tourism areas like Gwynedd and the effect that that's had, because it hasn't had the effect that you're expecting here. And all it will do is, if I may continue, is that people will turn those properties into holiday lets, businesses, small businesses, and they'll pay no rates at all. And the occupancy rate, I believe, for that is something in the region of, is it 11 weeks or even less than that to qualify for being classified as a business, and there's many ways around that as well. So we stand actually to lose and lose again with this rather than to gain anything, and asking people in the present economic climate to pay even more for the privilege of having a second home, which will have no effect on providing affordable housing, I think is truly abhorrent. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wally-Hoggins. I did notice in the consultation outcome, 2.3 of the report to Cabinet. Sorry, no, trying to be clever but didn't succeed, so thank you for that. Yeah, on 2.3 of the Cabinet report, it was 54% of all responses were in favour, which is, you know, obviously quite close. It's it shows that you know, obviously is in favour, but so it is obviously quite a contentious subject, I believe, and like I say, that obviously we've seen conflicting sides of the argument from Councillor Johnson and Councillor Wally-Hoggins. And I think that is probably reflecting what we saw from the consultation. Do you know, again, sorry, Hannah, if I'm asking questions which I should have asked you before, but I've only just thought of it, so I do apologise. Do you know when other local authorities have done similar consultations on this subject, what their responses were, or were they more overwhelming in favour, or just some background, please, really?
I've looked at a number of consultations that were done. The results are varied. I haven't seen one yet where the overwhelming result wasn't in favour. Sometimes it's been incredibly high. It's been in the 90s in terms of people that are in favour of it. And then sometimes it's been sort of more of a broad split where it's in favour, but that it's closer, as we've seen in terms of our consultation. Something that might be helpful in terms of thinking about LGR and any new unitary is North Warwick is the only local council that hasn't either implemented this or got plans to implement it. And the reason that Warwick have got plans to implement it is because of they're having to re-implement that decision.
I think I remember that, and I'm having to re-implement it. It came to the press. Councillor Wally-Hoggins, a follow-up, please.
Yes, so can I ask then, based on that, and this is probably a question for you, Richard, is, okay, so let's say that this was introduced. How much revenue is this actually going to put into this council then? Given the fact the reserves and the other spending that goes on by this Lib Dem council, please. I just want to know what difference financially, what that additional amount of money is going to add up to.
So I think I'll pick this up rather than Richard. So in terms of revenue, the revenue element of it is just one aspect of this. The broader thing is around actually bringing housing back into the market, where people have got second homes that are luxury homes. Then clearly people that own multi-million-pound homes are going to be able to afford this premium. It's unlikely to change their behaviour, so there will be that additional income that's generated that then can be reinvested back into affordable housing and initiatives to improve the supply of affordable housing, something that was incredibly well supported through the consultation. But it's in those other properties that actually are family homes that are in reach, that people may inherit. There was an awful lot of that, but that they keep as a weekend home that's used for friends and families, and actually that's part of what is driving the housing crisis. And there's a number of different ways in which this will deliver change. And for me, the way that you're going to tackle the housing crisis is in relation to, there are lots of levers that you can pull, and this is just one of the levers that incrementally they change the picture. In terms of the income, it's hard to assess the income because we don't know who will apply in terms of an exemption. So the government set out the properties where there are exceptions, where they're in probate, whether they're for sale, whether they're actively being marketed for rent. And so it's quite hard to determine what the revenue of this will be, but that isn't the primary driver. It is about the change in the housing supply.
Yeah, the report does say that there are 2,500 people on the waiting list. There are something like 900 empty or second homes that could possibly, if everything went well, come back into the housing market, into the housing stock. And if only 100 or 200 of those 800 or 900 are used for people on the waiting list, people that are homeless, I think that would be an incredible win, even if it doesn't actually bring in much money for the council, which it might not, because people will try and avoid it in all sorts of ways, as been said. I mean, it's only for people with second homes, this premium is a very small cost in terms of the overall cost of keeping a second home. And if they are then turned into holiday lets or small businesses, that's also a win, isn't it? Because that's more income coming into the district, it's more local businesses, and yeah, so I think overall it's only a win-win in terms of Stratford District Council and the housing crisis.
Okay. I've got some point that I know that the national exceptions that were being mentioned by the government and talking. In the report, we talk about determining a policy around local exceptions. Obviously, you know, some of the national ones might not be pertinent or relevant to our unique area. So therefore, I think we do need to have some consideration about these local exceptions, and it would be good from the Scrutiny Committee to see that, as Councillor Rice mentioned earlier. So thank you for that, Councillor Rice. So I think that would be good, because we've got to be open, transparent, and we've got to be fair to our residents. And I think having it out in the open and us scrutinise them properly, I think the residents will then have some confidence that the scheme the proposed scheme that comes forward will have some confidence that we've gone through the scrutiny and we've tried to be as fair as possible and looked at most processes. But in most policies, there will always be something that will be potentially missed. So I think there's one question there is, if somebody identifies an exception that has been missed and is a valid one, how would that be reconsidered or brought into the policy?
So Section 13A of the Local Government Finance Act gives us the ability as a council to reduce the amount of council tax that's due as we see fit. So the most prevalent example of that is where we've got the local council tax reduction scheme, but it also allows you to provide for those types of situations where something arises that is that wouldn't necessarily have been planned for or unforeseen. So I don't think there's going to be a need to plan for absolutely every possible exception. And one of the things that we'll do throughout the year in terms of looking at the development of a policy is about whether it's just providing clearer guidance under how we apply Section 13A, or whether we then also create additional categories where we say, for example, some councils have chosen to defer the the premium being applied in certain circumstances. So a retirement living property is a really good example of that we know that there are challenges in relation to the sale of the sale of those on the open market, where you've got a restricted pool who you can sell to, because there'll be restrictions around the age or potentially the care needs of individuals that can move into those properties. And if it just so happens that a particular scheme has sort of a high level of deaths in a short period, then you can find that period is particularly prolonged in terms of selling properties, and that's quite well established across the UK market. That isn't specific to the district. And so it would then just be about determining, is it something that you'd want to create an entire category of exception, or actually on a case by case, would you want to consider the circumstances?
That's really helpful. Hannah, Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so following on from that, I think it would be helpful if we were given the opportunity to look at what your thinking is in terms of the detail, and maybe I could suggest our 1st of July meeting would perhaps be a good time to consider that, which will be well before the budget process later in the autumn. Hannah doesn't like that at all, does she?
What I was going to say is I was going to bring the officers and ask them to suggest an appropriate timescale, but noting our concerns about December, January and February. So hopefully, do you want to come back on that? Hopefully that's helpful more intervention.
It can absolutely be in advance of the December, January. The reason that I'm kind of shaking my head in relation to July is one of the team's busiest times in relation to council tax, of course, is the beginning of the new year when all of the bills go out. And one of the things that we will want to do is understand in relation to the 859 properties that we've currently got, that are classified as second homes, understand a bit more about them, and that will happen through where we write to people and say, you know, we've made a determination that we're going to apply this, and we'll get them to give us a bit more information so we can understand who's covered by one of the existing exceptions, and then are there any particular types where there's sufficient number that we would want to say, actually, this justifies making a policy exception rather than a case-by-case determination. But it could certainly be, for example, September.
Funny enough, I was going to suggest September because obviously after your busy time, after the holidays as well, I thought September, October would be. So I think we've got some basis of agreement, and if we can do it, you know, reliant on officers to come up with an appropriate time. So now I've got Councillor Keithley, Councillor Wally Hoggins, Councillor Rolfe, Councillor Johnston again, did you indicate? Or was it Councillor Orcutt, did you indicate? So I've got Councillor Keithley, Councillor Wally Hoggins, then Councillor Rolfe, please.
Right, thanks, Chair. I think listening to views on this is quite interesting, because we've heard that there's some anecdotal evidence that perhaps when you introduce changes in policy like this, you actually end up with unintended consequences. Things don't play out as you think. And we're making assumptions about the positive impact on the housing supply of making such a change. But we're not going to be the first council that's gone down this route. I guess there's other councils already done it. So my question, Chair, to Hannah is there any evidence from other councils that have already adopted this sort of proposal that it has had the positive impact on the supply of housing that we are discussing today, that we are assuming will happen? Is there evidence to support such a policy change that will provide positive reaction from the owners, rather than unintended consequences of people getting exemptions and changing the nature of the use?
Yeah, Hannah, yeah, please.
I think the challenging thing with, in terms of the evidence, is that we don't know what applies in relation to those 859, and it would be the same in relation to other local authorities. So we know from Warwick, for example, that a lot of the properties were covered by exceptions because they were actively marketed for rent or for sale. The examples where people talk about this being a significant failure are all in Wales. and I don't think you can disregard the changes that they've made around renting properties at the same time. So there's a whole load of issues there that you can't unpick. And whilst there are some local commentators that are saying they blame the second homes premium, that isn't actually an evidenced basis for it. I'm not aware from the research that we've done that any local authority has been able to say this many properties have come back into use because of that. But what is, if you look at the local area here, the majority of local authorities locally have implemented this. If you look at Stratford and go out around the borders, so the ones that haven't implemented it in the local area are Solihull, Walsall, Redditch, Bromsgrove and Wychhaven, and North Warwick. But the majority of those that implemented it went in with it in the 1st of April 2025. So it's actually quite difficult, which is when you could bring this power in, it's quite difficult to be saying what's the impact less than a year down the line.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Hannah. That's actually quite useful, because I think what you're saying is that because some of these changes have already been brought in quite recently, nobody actually has the evidence to suggest that a significant number of houses have come back into the housing market. So you're going into this decision a little bit blind, in good faith. The other councils have said, oh, this is a good idea, so we'll follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wally Huggins, please, again.
Yes, I'm a little bit vexed by the Councillor Passingham's assertion that regarding the correlation between all of these houses coming on the market and it affecting the 2,500 people that are on the social housing list, because surely I don't think there's any intention to buy these properties for social rent and for those on the housing list, is there? I have more questions than that. But also, I respect the fact that we've been given the other areas that have gone down this route, but actually we need to look at high tourism areas. Whichever way you cut it, Stratford is an area for high tourism. Have we looked at, say, the Cotswold district? Have they done this? The consequences for them? And also with that, I'd also like to look at when we were looking at options for partners to do with devolution, we had a great big report came in for looking at Torbay and those sorts of areas as well. Do we know if they've implemented the second home tax, being as we relied so heavily on the evidence from the success of their devolved practices? So I do think we need to have a little bit more information here, and what bans, council tax bans, because that will give us an idea of the value of these properties. What council tax band are these properties sitting in, please, so that we can get a vague picture of where they are, and are they scattered throughout the district, or are there more in some areas than others? Because again, mapping of that would be interesting to see. I'm really concerned about it. I just think, when are we going to stop using residents, temporary or otherwise, as cash cows for this district council? Thank you.
So I think in terms of the point about the people that there's 2,500 people on the register, this is about viewing the housing market as a whole, and actually that if you get more properties that come back into supply, what that does is that then lowers prices, and therefore you almost see the domino effect. And so we've got people at the moment that can't afford to rent, can't afford to buy, that might be able to, which means there's less pressure on the housing register. We can then do more in terms of the affordable housing delivery and people moving through. So it's not about saying there's a direct impact that if we charge a premium, we're then going to buy that property and then place somebody into it. It's about sort of looking at the housing market as a whole.
Just to follow on. So your proposals then today, or the proposals before us, have got a series of unintended consequences, as Councillor Keithley said, whether we are aware of them or not. And one of those unintended consequences is going to be that everybody across the district's property will lose value as a result of this the implementation of this, because the property market will be swollen with all of the new houses, which will bring down the price of houses and the price of renting. So that is one of the consequences. That is what you've just sort of said, isn't it? That if you have more houses on the market, then there isn't the demand for it. So the demand, so therefore the property prices reduce. Any estate agent will tell you that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor White-Hopkins. I'm just thinking, obviously, I've got you down. I'll bring you in first. Just on this point, I think, obviously, we've now got some form of commitment to come back on this in September, October. Obviously, a complicated process, and I know staff have got a heavy workload, and particularly around with the new council tax bills come out, etc. I think what might be good is before the officers come back, whether we come up with a series of questions that we'd like scrutinised when they come back, so we can concentrate their mind, get best value, get best use of their time, and lots of things might be answered straight away, or when the policy comes out, the policy will forestall or answer some of those questions. So I think if we could start thinking about that for before that meeting, I think that would probably be helpful and certainly give some clarity for officers, which I think they would probably appreciate. So I think that might be helpful. And I don't know whether members of the committee think that's a helpful suggestion, or I'm just talking up from the top of my hat. But so just some thoughts on that. Mr. Perks, please.
I think it's probably worth just having a quick review of the governance and what we're trying to achieve this morning. This is a report that we've prepared as officers at the request of Cabinet. It will be considered by the Cabinet on Monday the 23rd of February, and then it will be debated at full council. So there'll be the chance for everybody to sort of have their view at full council, and if the proposal is to be carried, it will require a majority vote of the council. I think what we're here to do this morning is to try and raise issues that would be helpful for the Cabinet in consideration of their paper on the Monday morning before it goes to the Council. Currently, the recommendation suggests if the Cabinet sort of go along with it, there will be a recommendation to Council to approve this. So I think really as a committee this morning, what we're here to do is to try and give information that we want the Cabinet to consider as they reach their decision on the recommendation to Council, and then we can have a debate at full Council about sort of the merits or otherwise of the proposal. So that's probably where we need to get to by the end of today. Mr. Allison will need to sort of prepare through your chair a report into Cabinet. So if I could sort of, we've had quite a rounded debate about this, sort of try and work out what as a committee that you would like to be saying to Cabinet to help them sort of inform their decision.
I think that's, I'm going to bring you back in, Councillor Ralph, so per room 26. I think that's a really pertinent point, that I think one of the things that we have expressed concern about is about the policy around local exceptions, and that needs to be thought out properly, and to quote Councillor Keith, the unintended consequences and whether they've been taken into consideration. So I think that is quite relevant. So, but I think, you know, Mr. Perks has brought us back onto the correct path, I believe, and I think we've got to concentrate that. And we've also can report back to Cabinet that we will be scrutinising this later in the year to look at various different items, including local exceptions, etc. The potential workload on officers, the complexity organised, and look at how other local authorities have implemented and gained best practice, and also the pros and cons. So I think we obviously you wouldn't be able to get all that report in that detail to the Cabinet. So I think this is part of our role. So I think that was reasonable. So Councillor Rolfe, come on in, please.
Thank you. In my past life, I was an estate agent. Sad to say. And actually, it's interesting that Councillor White-Hopkins brought up the more houses on the market, the downward trend in prices. It can also have an effect the other way, that it causes better competition and people ask for more money. there are many factors about houses on the market. It's budget, mortgage rates. 859 houses are not all going to come back on the market in this district in 1 week. And as Councillor Passingham said, you know, if we're lucky, if we're very lucky, there'll be 100 maximum. They're not all going to come in 1 month. They're going to be over a period of time. So I doubt whether the market will be flooded with second homes back on the market. Anyway, that I just wanted to respond to that. I want to ask Tony a question, if I may. I personally would like the in principle put in the recommendation. You are saying that it's not possible to have that put in. Can you just... Is there any way we can reword it so it's not as definite, it's not as... Because my worry is do we have a back-out clause? Do we have a... In 6 months' time, do we have a way out of this if the government do a U-turn? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rolfe. I think you do need a clear decision on Monday of Council that you are going to do it or not going to do it. Well, if you are going to do it, because otherwise you'll be subject to judicial review, because there'll be sort of vagaries about the decision. They could argue that there wasn't adequate notice given and it would undermine the case. And there has been precedent that these decisions have been challenged at the Council, so we need to be sure that we're legally tied. With any decision of Council, it can be reviewed, and if 6 months through the year we decide that this is the wrong path for us because circumstances have changed, or when we've looked at it in more detail and the local exemptions make it inviable, we could bring a report back saying that we've made this decision due to circumstances, we want to make a different decision. So I think that would be the way to handle it. But we would need a clear decision Monday, but we could take a subsequent decision in 6 months' time.
And again, I think in the report that Mr Arneson helps me produce for Monday, we can again reflect this discussion and Mr Perks's comments as well, I think. So I know we've got 3 members of the Cabinet here today, but not all here, so they can reflect what we've said. So I think we're being fair and reasonable on that. Talking about fair and reasonable, Councillor Keithley, go on in, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Just picking up on what Councillor Rolfe said, there's some really quite interesting arguments floating around here. People making assumptions on the premise that, say, for example, 400 houses come back into the market for the stock, say, and all of a sudden 60,000 homes fall in value. I'm not sure I really understand that. Another one is let's increase the council tax on second homes, and it will bring homes back into the housing stock. We don't really know that either. We talked about revenue, and Hannah sort of talked about it was more about getting the houses into the stock. But actually, revenue is important, and as are the admin costs. You know, is it positive, this, financially, or might it be negative? And there's lots of uncertainty in these arguments. Nobody really knows. So what I would propose to you, Chair, is one thing that we could usefully use for Cabinet is some sort of sensitivity analysis on what if this many houses were to come back? What if only this number? What if the admin costs were this? What would the net revenue, what would the net benefit be financially? Because if the numbers are quite small, the administrative costs could be quite high. We've already talked about that. We have to have some extra support to get this. We might actually be financially worse off by having this policy. So some sensitivity analysis around these arguments would be quite useful, I think, at Cabinet. I mean, go in with your eyes open. At the moment, there are too many ifs and buts and what might happen. We don't know.
You'd almost been reading my notes, because I was... I was talking about cost-benefit analysis, but, sensitivity analysis. And well done for reading my writing, because I can't read it sometimes. But I think those are valid points. But again, that's the whole point of doing scrutiny. But Mr Perks, do you want to come back in again?
I can probably make some comments that hopefully the committee might find helpful in response to Councillor Keithley's questions. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't predict it. There are a lot of unknowns, and this is one small variance in a sort of massively changing housing market. So I think it would be difficult to quantify exactly what it did to property values because there are so many other influencing factors, but it would, in theory, increase supply. We've done some, I suppose, high-level modelling would perhaps be stretching a point as a management team about what this would sort of bring in for us. I don't think it's realistic to think that in year one all 859 properties would pay the 100% premium because there'll be a number of exemptions that are applied and it will change people's behaviour. Some of those will come back into supply, some people will pay the council tax on. We're fairly confident that it won't be a negative pressure. It's not a particularly heavy administrative burden, and a percentage of them will pay the council tax premium. We think that that would probably increase over time because in the first year there are a number of exemptions about properties being on the market, but you can only use those exemptions a limited number of times. You can't keep applying them. So we would imagine that there will be a sort of a small revenue growth. In terms of the percentage of our income, it's not going to sort of be massive, but as Hannah Buckley sort of illustrated, it is setting a direction that we're trying to sort of get homes used for the stock. We are struggling with a lack of a 5-year housing land supply. We have a lack of housing within the district, so it's part of that agenda. It's a tool that governments have given you to use if you choose to as a council, and the report hopefully sets out those options so that you can have a sort of full debate and decide if it's something you want to do at sort of full council on Monday afternoon. But hopefully that's useful. We don't think it would cost us money, but I don't think we'll be making a fortune from it either.
Okay, it is useful, Chair. Thank you very much for that intervention, Tony, because it is one of the levers you can now pull to try and change behaviours. I get that. And in fact, if you do nothing, you're just going to carry on with the same situation. And I do understand that as well.
And obviously, as Mr Perks explained to Councillor Rolfe, when we were talking about the in-principle item, it can potentially come back after 6 months or a year with a different policy as well, as we know that the government has been doing quite a lot recently. Councillor Rolfe, Councillor Passingham, I'm going to bring Councillor Waller-Hoggins in because she did indicate, then I'll bring you in next.
Yes, although this report is obviously fulsome in its details and is brilliantly written, I am really concerned this is coming before Cabinet and full council on Monday, because I think there's more information that we need in order to make a reasoned decision on Monday, both as a full council and for Cabinet. And what we don't know, and Councillor Keithley kind of asked some questions around it, what are the consequences for our residents if we defer this until April 2028, say when we've got the devolved council is then in place, allegedly? Why do we have to do this right now if we're still not sure of the impact that it's actually going to have? Is it beyond us to write to second homeowners and say, if we bring this in, what will your intention be? Will it be to put your house on the market? Will you rent it out? Will you put it into? Will you set it up as a holiday let? You know, that's quite an easy thing to do to get those responses. Because what I'm concerned about is that a 54% in agreement with regards to the survey that went out is not an overwhelming yes, please do this, is it? It's you know, it's not a massive assertion, although there is a majority there, and I'm just concerned that we could do with. I wasn't going to mention that, but I do think we need to. I just think there's more information that we need in order to make a reasoned decision here, because we know that tourism is important in this district and business, etc. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think we've. Councillor Passingham, yes, I remember you sneaked in at the last minute. If you want to...
Yeah, just some clarification about the 5-year housing supply numbers. If 100 or 200 of these empty homes did come back into the housing market, would that actually reduce the number of houses we need to supply? I mean, I know in the plan that the the head of development put forward for reducing the housing supply, there was a list of about 10 different ways of reducing the housing supply, windfalls and so on, and a number of other houses that could be brought back into the calculations. And can we assume that if 100 or 200 of these houses came back in, which is a pessimistic sort of estimate, I think, that would reduce the housing supply numbers?
No, they wouldn't count towards your new supply. They would be housing that was available within the market, but it wouldn't sort of affect the planning situation.
Right, thank you for that. I think we've done this one in quite a lot of detail, so thank you, Hannah. I think I'll disappear quickly if I were you, before you get collared again for more questions. Next item is regarding the update on the budget in light of the change of the local government funding final settlement that came out after the original budget papers were produced, and there are some changes that Mr. Burrell and the team have come up with, and will be briefing us about, and it's on the Cabinet report. Mr. Burrell, do you want to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as Councillor Crump has just said, I was going to say a normal year, but I don't remember a normal year. In prior years, the budget setting process by the second meeting of Cabinet before full council, we've normally had the final settlement. Well, this year it was late, and this paper comes forward with those final settlement figures included within it. It is a report that does detail a couple of minor changes to a couple of budgets, which I'll go through in a moment. The main features of the changes are that just a week before the Cabinet meeting of the 9th, well, it was actually on the Friday, there was great concern raised about the government changing the formula that was going to generate the income for this final settlement, and that they did assure us that they would compensate anybody that was affected and no council would be worse off. They did adjust the formulas. We did see a decrease of 481,000, I think it was, for 26-27, but they compensated us to a greater degree, so which is minor, but I'll take that, that's fine. So that's been included within the medium-term financial strategy, and it's called a transitional protection. This sum of money has topped up the 3-year settlement, and it does mean that we don't have to rely on the business rates equalisation reserve in the 5th year, as we've done in most medium-term financial strategies over the last decade, whilst we've had a single-year settlement. So this multi-year settlement has given some assurity to our finances going forward. It does show, though, by year 3, we're still £1.5 million short of income for our overall spending as a council. So it's not a long-term balanced budget. There would be, if this council continued to exist in its current form, a long-term plan needed to increase income or reduce costs to ensure the long-term sustainability of the council. But as the general fund currently stands, we are secure for the next 5 years on this medium-term plan. This additional money does mean that a couple of budget issues can be addressed. Again, the week before last Cabinet, it became apparent that the EPR, the Extended Producer Responsibility, which is funding that we receive from, well, via the government, which is a levy they put on producers for the packaging that they use. They take the money from the producers, pass it through to the council, so we can subsidise the cost of our disposal. We were advised this sum would be in the order of £2,033,000, and that's what was included within the budget for the current financial year, 25-26. They did say it was an estimate, but the subsequent figure that's come through is 1.613 million, so that's £420,000 less, which is extremely disappointing. So this additional funding has meant that I've recognised that reduction in funding. in the balance at the start of the medium-term financial strategy. And I've also reduced the budget going forward because I was on a ministerial meeting with Nico Heslop, and he was challenged a couple of times saying, is this funding guaranteed? And twice he said, it's guaranteed for 25-26, which made me immediately nervous for 26-27. So the budget that we were advised to put in for next year was actually higher than what we've received actually this year. So I've reduced that budget by half, or just over half, to 800,000 instead of 1.6 and a bit million. And I did have 500,000 in the 2 subsequent years that I've also taken out because I'm not confident that we can rely on that income going forwards. That said, homelessness, rough sleep and domestic abuse budgets, the funding that we receive for that has increased every year for the next 3 years. So in recognition of that, an additional expenditure budget has been added into the medium-term financial strategy for 3 years of £274,000. I've included that within the narrative. All these changes produce a medium-term financial strategy that results in a general fund balance at the end of 5 years, and I've lost my appendix, of 3.6 million, which is over the 3 million that I say should be the minimum that this council should work to. And that, Chair, is the report in a nutshell, unless there's any queries.
Thank you, Mr. Bourne. That's very helpful. The joys of dealing with funding from government and lack of clarity and unintended consequences. Well, we've heard that before today, so it is extremely disappointing, and obviously it's created you additional work that you've had to complete with very short notice. So thanks from the committee to officers involved in producing that. So it is very disappointing. Obviously, we've got the 5-year medium-term financial strategy with the 3.6 million. Did you say, Richard, at the end of? Yeah, that was a lucky guess. That was a lucky guess. You think I'll work with figures, wouldn't you? So thank you for that. I think that is very helpful. Your explanations were clear and concise. So I'm happy to receive the report. So any questions from members of the committee regarding this, apart from to support my frustration that the additional work you've had to undertake? And Mr. Perks, you want to come in?
I was just going to sort of pick up the same point that this will go, subject to any comments you have, this will go for sort of Cabinet for approval on Monday morning, and will be inform the budget debate at Council that you'll have on Monday afternoon. So I'm sure you'll have points to raise there.
Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
I can't remember the fancy name, but the packaging, the bit about the packaging for businesses, and is there any correlation between how much we recycle as a district, because our recycling levels are really high, and the amount of money that we get back or not? Sorry.
Yes.
Could I defer to Mr. Perks on this?
I can't pretend to. I can't pretend to fully understand how the formulas work, but yes, there is a relationship that the more you recycle as a district, the more you get paid. You get different levels of EPR funding for the different councils, and they're all calculated centrally and dished out. So we, certainly in the first year, we did really quite well out of it.
I'll just bring Mr. Borer in, and then I'll bring you back in, sir, please.
Yes, just as Mr. Perks has said, there is no clarity over to how it's calculated, but I did have a conversation last week with the other Section 151s of Warwickshire, and 2 other authorities have significantly benefited this year from a payment that was over what they were expecting. I think it was Rugby were expecting 900,000, they got 1.5 million. So that's clear where our funding has been redirected to. So I'm not entirely sure how it's calculated, and I don't think it's something that's necessarily open to challenge.
Councillor Wally Hoggins, please.
Yeah, so my next question is then, do we need to encourage more blue bin uptake? Said the family with 2 blue bins, that's always full when it's collected, you know, to try to get more income from the government. I'm just saying, you know.
A future income generation.
It's a sense of pride that both my blue bins are full when they're collected. It's a little thing. So yes, not quite the climate denier that you all think. Thanks.
I would have thought we would have been talking about blue bins when we were talking about the budget, but never mind. Yeah, income generation and all that. Any more questions for Mr. Burrell? Brilliant. That's great. So thank you for that. Thank you, Richard. And obviously, we'll see you Monday at the budget debate. Item number 6, urgent business. I've not been notified of any urgent business. So at 11:01, I close this meeting. Thank you.